The Man of the Law's Tale, Part 2. The company of Christians reached the coast of Syria, a great and solemn rout. Immediately the Sultan sent a post, first to his mother, then to all about, to say his wife had come beyond a doubt, and beg her to take horse to meet his bride, and do her honor for his kingdom's pride. Great was the throng and splendid the array of Syrians and Romans in their meeting. The mother of the Sultan, rich and gay, received his lady with as fond a greeting as any mother would have shown in treating a well-beloved daughter. So they ride solemnly to the city side by side, not Caesar threading the triumphal arch, whom Lucian celebrated with such a boast, was royaler than this exotic march at the assembly of this blissful host. And yet this scorpion, this malignant ghost, the Sultaness, for all her flattering, gathered herself most mortally to sting. The Sultan came himself a little after, so royal he was wonderful to see, and welcomed her with joy and happy laughter. And in this merriment I let them be. The fruit of it is what you'll get from me. After a time they thought it for the best to end their revelries and take their rest. The day appointed came. The Sultaness, old Harridan, fixed the feast of which I told. Thither the host of Christian people press. In general assembly, young and old, what a display there was of kingly gold! What dainties in the dishes! As for those, they bought them all too dear before they rose. O sudden grief that ever art near neighbor, to worldly bliss sprinkled with bitterness, the ends of joy in all our earthly labor. Grief occupies the goal to which we press. For your own safety think it is no less, and in your day of gladness bear in mind the unknown evil forging on behind. Briefly to tell my story as is fitting, Sultan and Christians were all overthrown, hacked to pieces, stabbed where they were sitting, all but Lady Constance spared alone. The ancient Sultaness, accursed crone, helped by her friends, did all she had planned, being resolved herself to rule the land. Not one converted Syrian that under the Sultan's leadership had shared his thought, but ere he could start up was hewn in sunder. As for the Lady Constance, she was caught, and to a rudderless sailing vessel brought, hot foot, and bidden learn to sail the sea, quit Syria, and make for Italy. She had some store of treasure, let me add, for sake of truth, and full supplies of food were given her, with such garments as she had. And forth she sailed the ocean, salt and rude, O Constance, full of sweet solitude, O Emperor's daughter of a mighty realm, he that is Lord of Fortune, guide thy helm. She crossed herself, and with a piteous falter of voice addressed the cross of Christ, and said, Holiest cross, O rich and shining altar, bright with the blood of pity the Lamb bled, to wash the world's iniquity, O shed protection from the fiend upon me, keep my soul the day I drown upon the deep. Victorious tree, protection of the true, thou that wert only worthy to uprear the King of heaven in his wounds all new, that whitest lamb hurt with the cruel spear, O blessed cross that puts the fiend in fear, O man of man or woman that is signed with thee, help me amend my life, and succour me. For many a year and day this creature fled upon the Grecian seas, and reached the strait beyond Morocco, so her fortunes led. Many a time in grief she must abate her sorry meals, expecting death, and wait till in the raging waves her vessel reach what shore soever in the end and beach. It might be questioned why she was not slain, or who was at the banquet there to save. To that demand I answer back again, who succored Daniel in the horrible cave, where every one but he, master and slave, fell to the lions and were torn apart? No one but God bore him in his heart, God to proclaim the wonders of his arm, by miracle through her would have it so, and Christ, who is the honey to all harm, has chosen instruments, as well we know, to work his purposes that darkly show to human ignorance our feeble sense grasps not the prudence of his providence. And if not murdered at the feast, what law kept Constance then from drowning in the sea? And who kept Jonah in the fish's maw till he was spouted up at Nineveh? It was none other, certainly, than he who kept the Hebrew folk from being drowned, crossing the sea dry-footed, safe and sound, and who commanded the tempestuous mouth of the four winds that trouble land and sea, saying, O west and east, O north and south, touch with no trouble ocean, land, or tree. There is no such commander, if not he that walked the water. He it was who kept this woman safe, awake, or when she slept. Where then, for some 3 years upon the wave, got she her food and drink? And who sufficed to marry the Egyptian in a cave, and fed her there? Certainly none but Christ. 5 loaves and 2 small fishes, overpriced the needs of the 5,000. So indeed, God's foison came to Constance in her need. Forth over the ocean then she dove and came safe through our stormy channel till at last, under a castle that I cannot name, far in Northumberland, the billows cast her vessel on the sands and held it fast. From ebb of tide to the returning crest, there by the will of Christ she came to rest. This castle had a constable in chief, who came to see the wreck, and as he thought, he searched it through, and found in all her grief this woman and the treasure she had brought him. In her foreign language she besought for mercy, begging him to take her life, and so deliver her from earthly strife. Latin she spoke, of a degenerate kind, but all the same she made him understand, and he assured there was no more to find. Upon the vessel brought her safe to land. She knelt to thank him, seeing in him God's hand, but who she was would not utter breath, for hope of favor or fear of death. She said the seas had blotted out her life, and she in truth had lost her memory. The constable, together with his wife, moved to compassion, wept in sympathy, and Constance showed such sweet alacrity to serve and please all people in that place, they loved her, that but looked upon her face. This constable and Hermegild his wife were pagans like their neighbors everywhere. Hermegild came to love her as her life, and Constance made so long a sojourn there, giving herself to weeping and to prayer, that Jesus brought conversion of his grace to Hermegild, the lady of the place. In all that land no Christians dared to meet for worship. Most had fled, for long before a pagan army and a pagan fleet had made their conquest of this northern shore. To Wales, and therefore fled a Christian corps of ancient Britons dwelling in our isle. That was the refuge of the faith meanwhile. Not wholly so, for there were some believed and honored Christ apart in secrecy, so that their pagan rulers were deceived. There happened near the castle to be 3, one among whom was blind, and could not see, save with the inward eyesight of the mind, that still can shed its light upon the blind. Bright was the sun when on a summer's day the constable suggested they might go, he and Constance and his wife, along the way toward the sea for half a mile or so, just for the pleasure of roaming to and fro. And on their walk it chanced they met at last this old and crooked man, with eyes shut fast. The blind old Briton cried, For Jesus' sake, my Lady Hermegild, restore my sight. Now she, on hearing him, began to quake, for fear her husband, should it come to light, she was of Christ, would have her slain outright. But Constance made her bold, bidding her search, and do Christ's will as daughter of his church. The constable, abashed at what he saw, said, What's all this about? And stopped to stare. And Constance answered, Sir, the power and law of Christ can save us from the devil's snare. And she began so fully to declare our faith, that what she said to him sufficed, ere evening fell, to turn his heart to Christ. This constable was not the overlord, where Constance had been found upon the strand, but long had held the region with his sword, for Allah, king of all Northumberland. He was a wise king with a powerful hand, against the Scots, as everybody knows. Let me turn back to how my story goes. Now Satan, who is ever on our track to trick us, seeing Constance's perfection, and casting round how he might pay her back, filled a young knight who lived in that direction with foul desires of such a fierce complexion that the fellow thought he'd die, so sharp the spur of lust, unless he had his will of her. He wooed her fiercely, it availed him not, for she would yield to sin for no persuasion. So, out of spite, he compassed in his thought a shameful death for her by some evasion or stratagem, and when on some occasion the constable was absent, in he crept softly one night to where Hermengilda slept. Weary with prayer and holy meditation, she lay near Constance. Little did she note how he, o'ermastered by the fiend's temptation, had softly come upon her. Then he smote the Lady Hermengold and slit her throat. Then laying the bloody knife beside the bed of Constance, he went his way. God strike him dead. Next day the constable returned again with Allah too, king of the country round, to find his wife was piteously slain. Wringing his hands he wept and fell to the ground, and there, by Constance, in the bed he found the bloody knife. Alas, what could she say? Out of her wits with terror and dismay, they told the king of the unhappy deed, and also of the manner, time, and place in which they came on Constance in her need, upon the ship, and brooding on the case. He felt a shock of pity. In her face he saw benignity. Could such a glance in one so lovely fall to such mischance? And so, as when a lamb is brought to slaughter, she stood, this innocent, before the king. And the false knight, the villain that had sought her, destruction swore that she had done this thing. The rest stood weeping by and clamoring that it was unimaginable she had done so monstrous an iniquity. For they had ever known her virtuous and loving to her mistress Hermengild, and the whole of the household gave its witness thus, except the knight by whom she had been killed. Much moved by this, the gentle king was filled with a desire for stronger proof to hit, but deeper questioning the truth of it. By deeper questioning the truth of it. Alas, my Constance, champion hast thou none, nor canst defend thyself. What wilt thou say? But he that died for our redemption, Son of God, was who bound the fiend, and where he lay, there lies he still, shall champion thee this day. Without an open miracle from on high, to save her she assuredly must die. She fell upon her knees, and thus she prayed, Immortal God, thou who didst save Susanna, falsely accused, and thou merciful maid, and Mother Mary, daughter of Saint Anna, before whose child the angels sing Hosanna, if I be innocent of this felony, let me not die. Support and succor me. Have you not sometime seen a paler face among the crowd of one that has been led toward his death, having obtained no grace, with such a color in his face so dead, as to be singled out, beset by dread, among all other faces in that rout? So also Constance stood and gazed about. O queens abiding in prosperity, you duchesses and ladies, hearts of stone, would have compassion on her misery. An emperor's daughter, there she stands alone, without a soul to whom she can make moan. O royal blood standing in greatest need, and deadly fear, far are they friends indeed. King Allah felt compassion for her fears. A noble nature pities at a look, and was unable to restrain his tears. At last he said, Let someone fetch a book, and if this knight will swear an oath she took the knife and killed this woman, we shall confer, and name a man for executioner.